Good afternoon. Welcome to our session, Dive into the Future of Change in Deployment Management. Before we dive into the future, I want to dive into the agenda with you. So first, I want to talk about the core capabilities in Change in Deployment Management, then about what is new, meaning what we have delivered in the last half year in the area, then the outlook, meaning we look into the roadmap, so what we want to develop, and then there's a summary. And then the last 10 minutes, I have Daniel with me, who will directly report from customer Fanuc how they are using the change in deployment management in their company. Okay. So then let's look at the objectives of change in deployment management. So just very rough, mainly what we want to do is we want to accelerate the transports from the development system to the productive environment. So any change that you perform in your systems, of course, needs to be transported through the landscape, and the main goal is to organize that, to accelerate that, and to perform that process in a reliable and transparent process. So what we use for that one is the so-called feature. So those of you who know Solution Manager know that everything was called a change. Now in Cloud ALM, we call it feature, but the idea behind it is still the same. So what we want to do is using it as a vehicle to collect the transport requests and to move them through the landscape. But we want to do that, of course, in an orchestrated way, meaning if you have several different system types in your company, and as well maybe even business processes that would go across those systems, of course you want to ensure that the transport requests from those different systems are as well moving in sync through the landscape. And this is what the feature does for you. So we orchestrate the changes, and on top of that, of course, we collect all the data which is happening during the process on documentation and logging the users and who performed which step in which system. So the feature workflow out of the box is like that. So we will start in status in specification, which is where you specify the change itself, going on to in implementation. Up to that status in implementation, you could still go back to a status not planned if you want to indicate you are still waiting. But as soon as you are in implementation, there's no way back, and you can start to develop. So you can start to create transport requests for your development system, perform the change, maybe lock down description on what you do, and then finally switch to the next status in testing, which means what was developed will be tested. And if it's okay, we can go on to successfully test it. If it fails, it goes back to in implementation. So we do that round until it is successful. And then finally, after successfully tested, the most important status ready for production, meaning a change advisory board, for example, could set that status to give the very last approval that a transport request is allowed to go into the productive environment. Finally, when we have imported into a productive system, the status deployed. So for which kind of landscapes do we allow this? Of course, the CTS transport world with the S/4HANA systems on-premise, as well as the S/4HANA systems in the private cloud. As well, we have a connection to the ATO, the Adaptive Transport Organizer, which means we can look at the transports for the S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition. And via the Cloud TMS, we have the connection to our cloud systems, BTP and some others, which as well use the CTMS transport. All orchestrated, of course, via the Cloud ALM. So from the transport-related actions, meaning create, release, and perform an import on the systems, what is possible for which kind of transport methodology. I have this table here. So for CTS, you can see that it is exactly like you're expecting it. So we can perform all of it from the creation of the transport request to the releasing up to the import into target and productive systems, including transport of copies. For CTMS, at the moment, creation is still missing, meaning we are waiting for released transport requests from CTMS that we assign to an existing feature, and then from that point on, we would follow up with the imports. In the area of ATO, so that's the public cloud, at the moment, we don't have the capability because we are still missing APIs, but this is coming next year. So for the moment, this is just that you assign released transport requests to the change and deployment management feature, and then you would still get the traceability, so you could see on the feature where the transport is, in which landscape, in the quality assurance system or in the productive system, and you could as well use a quality gate on that. Okay, then let's go to what's new. So this is the features that we have delivered in the last half year around. So we have now included the ABAP test cockpit checks, meaning before a transport request is released, you can perform that check, and this will trigger the check on the managed system. So depending on how you have set up the ATC check on the managed system, you will get the results. So that's the security for you before you release a transport request to ensure that everything on the development is all right. On top of that, we have the transport check. So this is now after release, before import. So here we do downgrade protection checks as well as cross-reference checks, which means we are checking that you are importing in the correct sequence, so that if you have, for example, two objects or two changes to the same object, version 1, version 2, that nobody is importing version 1 in the wrong order, so that in the end, it could happen that version 1 is still in the buffer while version 2 was already imported, and then you would have a downgrade as soon as somebody imports version 1. So this is not happening if you use the downgrade protection check. This will indicate that in advance before you perform the import. And the cross-reference check is similar, or is performed at the same time as this check. And here we check for references, meaning, for example, you have a report that calls a function module, but the function module is not part of your development, so it's part of a different transport request on a different feature, and it's already as well not in the target system available. That means if you would perform an import, that report or that transport request would run into an RC8. So with the cross-reference check, we have something like a RC8 prediction in advance. So if you do that and you have those checks and you have the green lights, then you can be on the safe side that the import, if you trigger it, will have no RC8s and will have the correct sequence. Same applies if you do that on the deployment scheduler. So the deployment scheduler is meant to perform the import of several features at the same time. So you have several possibilities to sort and to filter your features and then bundle them and trigger an import via that deployment scheduler. The other possibility, of course, would be to individually move each and every feature, but of course more going into the idea of a release management. Of course, you want to bundle features that belong together because of their release information. So you could use the release as a filter here, and then via the deployment scheduler, import the full package. Then the same checks as we've just seen, the downgrade protection check as well as the cross-reference check, can be executed based on the deployment scheduler, meaning we can do the calculation for downgrade protection as well as for the cross-reference check, not only on the individual feature, but as well for the bundle. So Depending on how you bundle your features, we will calculate which are the transports included in that bundle and then perform exactly those two checks as well. Then we have invented, or not invented, but put the two new roles, developer and tester, into the feature. So before it was like there's the change manager and the deployment manager as role, and you needed to use the project member or the project manager, the project lead, to take over the role of developer and tester, and this was a little bit too powerful. So now with the developer, we really have a role which is dedicated to exactly set the status which is needed, and the same applies for the tester. Another thing which is new is the transport of copies notification, meaning if you perform a transport of copy triggered from the feature in the status to be tested, for example, then you trigger a transport of copy and something fails on the way. The creation of the transport of copy fails, or the release could fail, as well as the import into the target system, of course, is another source of failure. If one of these three things happen, of course, you want to be alerted as a user. So you would get an in-app notification with a possibility as well to switch that to emails if you want, so that the user that triggered the transport of copy, and it takes a while to be performed successfully, and if not successful, you would get an email directly that it failed. Most recent change just released is the workflow management extension. So the possibility to extend our workflow, which we deliver as a fixed workflow, between in testing and successfully tested. There's a new API, our workflow API, and you can enhance it and use, for example, the workflow management on BTP to have an extension on that. And there will be a dedicated session exactly on that API and on this workflow extension at 4:30 in this room. So whoever is interested in this, 4:30 in this room. Valeria will present it. Good, then we have the defect integration. So Valeria already told it in the keynote that we will no longer have a full defect correction, so an additional document for fixing defects, but we will use the normal feature to do that. And that, of course, means that we need to bundle and link the defect to the feature, and we have the different possibilities for that. So you directly from the defect, you could create the feature and with this link it, or you can have an existing one and link it by a sign, and as well the other way around, that you have an existing defect and an existing feature, and then from the feature you want to link it. So these are the possibilities, and this would be, of course, the way to fix issues that are coming up during the test phase, where you create a defect and where the defect needs to be solved with the transport request. So the source for transport request is a feature, so you would use that linkage to the feature to perform the fix. Coming to the outlook. So, surprise, many customers wanted it. Now finally we do it. So we will deliver a retrofit process for our change and deployment management. It's targeted for Q4 this year. And of course, what does the retrofit? It performs a retrofit. So in a dual landscape, so here we have our maintenance landscape and the dual implementation system group. And if you have this kind of setup during an upgrade period, for example, of course, you want to ensure that changes that are performed on the maintenance side are synchronized to the implementation side. and this is exactly happening via retrofit. So what we do in retrofit is we will calculate conflicts based on object level. So, well, automatically there's the two different possibilities that we have. So there is a conflict or there is no conflict. If there is no conflict between the two different systems of the changes, then we simply copy the whole object or the several objects which are completely conflict-free and just transport it into the implementation system group, and with that have it synchronized already. In case there is a conflict, you needed to solve that in a manual way. But we have our retrofit cockpit, and in comparison to what we had in Solution Manager before, where the retrofit really, well, when it was manual, you needed to manually create your transport request and maybe assign it to an additional change and a project. Now we have some kind of automation via the retrofit cockpit, because in the cockpit we put the source and the target together, and we also create a default target for the maintenance synchronization with the retrofit. So there will be a default feature and a workbench request as well as a customizing request as a default target. And all you need to do is just mark those green retrofits, and then automatically the rest will be performed by the system. This is like a higher automation than in Solution Manager. And for the manual ones, you would still get, of course, the default target, but the work is then yours. So because it's more or less not artificial intelligence, but your intelligence to solve that conflict. Then we want to have additional user roles on the feature. So at the moment, there's only person responsible, and we want to enhance that by having additional roles with the tester, the change manager, the deployment manager, so that these roles are as well available on the feature, and you can assign different users there. And in the best case, of course, that user is as well part of your project, assigned there as developer, tester, and change manager. And only those who are assigned to the project via a filter then are available to be assigned. What we also want to do is the test case integration, so that you have a possibility to assign a test case to a feature, meaning that, for example, if you do that, you want to as well perform the test run for that test case via the feature. And then, of course, you want to make sure that you cannot set, for example, successfully tested if that specific test case which is assigned to the feature was not green as well. Lots of more things on the outlook for the full year next year. So APIs, I will have an additional slide for that one. We've seen the test case integration, additional user roles. On top of that, we have the landscape validation. So this is that we want to check that the transport route that you are assigning to the Cloud ALM as well really is like that in the available in the managed system, so that we validate the route, and that we also make sure that you are not going the wrong way, more or less. As said, the automatic and manual retrofit, and on top of that, we want to as well have a fixed process, so which is a emergency accelerated process to transport stuff faster to production, even faster to production. Then we want to enhance the retrofit with a conversion scenario, meaning that you can as well use it for conversion projects, including the ATC check and the simplification database. As said, the ATO deployment, so for the S4 public cloud, should be like that. Okay. And CTS enhancements, meaning we want to have the deployment cockpit as well, have the CTMS transport possibilities. Then we want to have mass edit possibilities. We want to enhance the deployment app at all, meaning more or better possibilities to perform schedules, so that you could, for example, perform a schedule based on weekdays or in an unregular sequence, so that just more flexibility to be built in. We want to as well have task handling, so that today, from the feature, you have the possibility to create a transport request, but tasks is still on the managed system. So as well the possibility to create a task directly from the feature as another possibility. Okay, and then finally at the end of the next half year in 2026, phase cycle on the release. So the release today is just the cycle, but we want to make phases so that specific actions in TMS is only allowed to specific phases. So that, for example, you cannot import into the test system while a test is running. Just simple as that. Critical object and allow list, so that's standard change and critical objects, so that you, while you perform a change, we perform a check on a specific table where you tell these are my critical objects that need additional approval, or we check that this is a whitelist object, so an allow list object, like completely uncritical change, you can, without any additional approval, just move it to productive system outside of any release schedules that might be part of your company, just anytime, because it's whitelist object. On top of that, we want to offer custom export checks, so that you can have your own check included into the workflow, as well as enable custom fields, which is as well a feature coming from the, very asked a lot. This is another enhancement. And finally, the retrofit scheduler, so that this already automated retrofit process can be automated even higher, so that just in background, a job is running and the retrofit is happening. From the features that we offer, we have all available. So the resource API for external systems, read API as well for external systems to read what is happening in the feature. We can create a new feature from outside. We can trigger the workflow, as said, and there was a session later on. Update as well. And what is the only thing which is missing, but which will be released very soon, is the status switch API, so that from external we can switch explicitly a status, except release for production. So that's the exception. All other statuses can be set. Okay, and to sum up, we've seen now the core capabilities of our change and deployment management in Cloud ALM, which is definitely, of course, everything that has to do with the transports, may it be CTS, ATO, CTMS. So this is the core of the feature and the core of the change and deployment management. And we want to enhance that, of course, with the expected stuff in Cloud ALM that we still want to develop, which is the retrofit, what we've seen, the ECC to S4 conversion possibility, some more automations and a check framework within the workflow, those critical checks that we want to perform, the custom fields and so on, and all the rest, which is like, we define it as the special cases or the special processing, we leave it to the partners. So we offer a lot of APIs, and for example, if you would need a cross landscape distribution, XLD, or template protection, what we've seen in the keynote as well from Chris, the template protection, of a complex landscape, this is what we leave up to the partners, so that for any special processing, they will offer a solution and they integrate into the feature workflow, so that you still, of course, have the end-to-end traceability within, but the information is not lost and is still tracked on the feature, but the functionality is outside in the partner solution. Okay, with that, please, Daniel, show us how Fanuc used the deployment management.
Thank you very much, Frank. Very nice and cool features which are coming. Allow me to start the presentation with also a warm welcome from my side. Happy that you all joined our session. And because I hate it very much, I would like to start my part with a question to you, or with 3 questions. Who needs to put or deploy changes to production here in the round? Who is doing that via Solution Manager? Who is doing that already via Cloud ALM and features? Nice. Who is doing it classical with ABAP transports, still old-fashioned? Still some. Okay, thank you very much. Let me start. What is Fanuc? Fanuc is the factory automation company, meaning we have a lot of products which helps automotive, other big companies to automate their assembly manufacturing. What the products itself we produce, I will come the next slide in more in detail. And what is also, I think, one of our key capabilities is that our products are working hand in hand. What do I mean with that? For example, if you have a molding machine, a robot from us can put a device in or get the finished product out, and we therefore have this so-called assembly lines also with all of our products together. What is Fanuc? Our roots we have in Japan. There's also our headquarter. Net sales, I think also quite impressive, 5 billion euros converted from Japanese yen. Number of employees worldwide, 9,900. For sure, the numbers are from last year, but it doesn't matter. I think it gives a glance how big Fanuc is. What is the specialty about Fanuc? We believe that the products from ourselves can be produced best with our products itself. So meaning all our products I will show in the next slide are produced from our products itself. So I think that this is quite impressive. And what you see also in the background on the slide is the Mount Fuji. And below that, the whole Fanuc headquarter, I would call it city, is located, where we have research development departments, as well as the whole production from all our products is happening in Japan. When we talk about the products, what are we talking about? We have CNC controls, servo motors, the robots I just explained, also injection molding machines. I'm not sure if you have had the chance to be in the pop-up factory in Walldorf. There's also one molding machine from us where you can see it live in action. So if you get a chance, have a look. Also, for sure, IoT is a topic, and also we are in the area of Fanuc AI very active. Now, how I get the bridge back to our topic. Fanuc Europe, where I'm part of, we started 3 years ago a journey from JDE Oracle, JD Edwards, to SAP. we launched an initiative which was called Boost, and this was the transition to S/4HANA Greenfield project. With that project, we also got a clear statement from our CIO, which is cloud first, and that was subsequently followed through the whole tool chain. So we're using within FANUC the integrated tool chain from SAP, be it LeanIX for processes, be it Cloud ALM for transportation. Also, we started with system monitoring, and the biggest portion we did with Cloud ALM was the whole testing. Beside that, also, we needed to make sure and create a transparent way how we document and move our changes to production, and therefore test management was our tool of choice or our feature of choice. Let me come with that to our transport strategy or how we do it. For sure, we have internal audits where each and every change into our productive system needs to be documented. And this we follow by a process which is in service now, a so-called change, as well as technically then with a feature and assigned transport defects requirements in Cloud ALM. I know maybe it's not smart, but we started like that, and this is also, let's say, journey we are onto, that we always question ourselves. We see how our process is running, and if something is or can be maybe done better with new features shipped from SAP, be it with process automations, etc., we adapt and we change. So right now, what we are doing is we cluster each week. So we have a weekly deployment every Wednesday, where we cluster all the qualified defects or gaps into one feature, and that moves through the landscape. What do I mean with qualify? For sure, it needs to be successfully tested and confirmed from our QA team. Right now, we are doing this by clicking the feature through, be it releasing it finally to quality and then moving it to production. But with the nice outlook, we also are quite eager to move to the deployment scheduler in near future. For sure, also for urgent emergency cases, we follow the same process. Quickly, an overview how the objects are connected to each other at FANUC. So we have one face to the customer, meaning all incidents, all requirements, all legal changes needs to be reported and documented in ServiceNow. And for the technical objects, we create relations then in Cloud ALM with defects requirements. If a defect is then ready for retesting or a requirement has the relevant status, screenshots needs to be provided and documented in Cloud ALM. And if then with the quality approval, everything is right, we pack it into the feature. The feature is then related to a change. As I explained, we are not allowed to change the productive system with documenting it or without documenting it, be it meaning we create a ServiceNow change and then the references, meaning transport IDs, etc., the feature itself, we document in the change in ServiceNow. What we achieved with that is that we gained transparency along the deployment process. What we also needed to follow is segregation of duty. So also in the J.D. Edwards world, and this was from our internal audit, a must-have we need to bring also with SAP is that the developer or the customizer itself is not allowed to create a transport. And therefore, we initiated that process that out of the basis team, we create via Cloud ALM all the transports needed in the system, via Cloud ALM in the development system. And then we assign it to the customizer or developer. They do the changes, and then we are going with transport of copies into the queue system. There it can be tested, and after, as I explained, quality approval is done, we are ready to move to production. Good. I already took some points of our outlook, next steps. We also want to include, because we also have an integration suite running, we want to include also there the transports in our, let's say, Cloud ALM routine. We know CTMS is already available and possible, so there the task is at our side. We also want to extend the feature with other SAP Cloud products. For example, we also have a field service management. We have an CPQ. We have other BTP applications where we are eager when SAP is including them also to be able to be transported via a feature in Cloud ALM. Also, the ATC checks, downgrade protection and reference check is available already, and we also investigating in that direction that this can be activated soon in our system. That is what I meant with we review our process. So in the past we have, or right now we have one feature with many transports and defects assigned. Maybe as a pre-step we need to rethink that and create out of the defects with the new functionality single features, and with that we can then also go to the step with the deployment scheduler in near future. Good. As an, let's say, motivating or inspiring, I learned some of you are already using the feature functionality, but for those who are not, how you are going to boost your implementation with SAP Cloud ALM by long-run marketing campaign. The word boost is also used from SAP, which was also our program name. No, it's a coincidence. And with that, I want to conclude my part of the presentation. I would like to ask you, Frank, back on the stage. And with that, we want to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Daniel, for that insights and well, how Cloud ALM, Change in Deployment Management, can be used already today. You are invited to have some more questions, but we need to leave the room. So I think on the left side, if you go downwards the stairway, there's a table and we will be there for questions. Thank you.